So youth group's a little different this week.
There's a little bit, yeah.
We're not with you guys, but we wanted to do something a little more normal, a little more formal. And so since we can't do icebreakers in the way we normally do, we figure we would do something new.
Yeah.
So what do you have for me?
Well, I thought we could play some Would You Rathers. I know we've...
Do I have to run from that side or that side?
No, so this is how it's a little bit different than it is normally in youth group, but I figured this is still kind of a fun way that we can interact, we can play. So if you want to, feel free to play along. So when I ask a question, pause the video, and whoever's watching, you guys can sit and talk about it yourselves too. But we thought this might be kind of
Should I be nervous?
No, I picked nice ones this time actually. So
this time? Have you ever picked mean ones?
Well, maybe not mean ones, but we can maybe be a little more creative. If you guys have any suggestions, if you'd like us to do more of these Would You Rathers, let us know. And especially if you want us to find some cool themed ones. These ones are just generic. So, are you ready?
Should I be generically worried?
Maybe just generically ready would be good. Prepared.
I guess I'm prepared.
Okay. Would you rather take a 1 week trip to the foreign country of your choice, or take a 4-week trip around your own country, aka the United States?
Oh, this country. The flag, yes. 1 week or 4 weeks? I think I would do the 4 weeks around the U.S. A lot of America to see. 4 is more than 1.
4 is more than 1. That's a good point. You could have a slower trip, right?
We were talking about going to Montana today.
We were talking about going to Montana today. You want to listen to a good, fun song, Montana by Owl City.
Yeah, we've been listening to a lot of music, especially with Sarah. We've been dancing with her. All right, what's my next one?
Okay, number 2. Would you rather play on a baseball team that always wins but always has to play in the rain? Or would you rather play on a baseball team that always plays in sunny weather but also always loses?
Well, how can you always win if you're playing in the rain? Because they cancel for rain delays.
Good point.
We've been to the rained out rained out baseball games.
Sat in the car
for about like 3 hours.
Yeah, waiting and waiting and waiting. And then cancel the game.
And they canceled the game after those 3 hours.
Point.
So I'd rather be on the losing team, I guess.
Good point. All right, number 3. Would you rather be the best player on a team that always loses, or be the worst player on a team that always wins? So this is kind of in the same vein as the previous question.
I think I'd rather be the worst player on a team that always wins.
I think that's fair, because at least you can enjoy the winning.
Maybe that means I'm the best player on a team that always means 500.
Oh, that's a good
or
point.
it just means I'm just, a bench warmer. Scrub.
Okay. Ooh, okay. This one is a little more close to home, I think. Would you rather be banned from all computer use for an entire year, or not be allowed to eat any desserts or sweets for a year? That's a tough one.
I'm probably better off not eating sweets.
No, it's would you rather, though.
I'd rather not eat sweets.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, that's fair. I think since my whole job is on a computer, I probably would have to say the sweets.
Right now, my whole job's on a computer, so I could go without a few sweets.
Okay, number 5. Would you rather be able to control the weather or be able to talk to animals?
Talk to animals.
Yep, that's an easy one for me, too.
That's hard. But, maybe, unless it's really loud all the time, because all the animals do is talk and we just never realize it.
I still think it'd be fun to talk to them for sure. Okay. Would you rather be given $1,000 right now or be given $50 a month for the rest of your life?
So that's about $600 a year. So in 10 years, it's $6,000.
It's basic math. It's an easy answer, I think.
And $50 means I could take you out for dinner like once a month. So I think I'd rather take the $50 a month.
All right, that sounds good. I like this. All right, would you rather...
I thought about that really logically. I think you're supposed to be totally emotional with that one.
Yeah. Would you rather have bright blue teeth or have bright blue hair? I'll say they're both natural, not like you chose to do that. Because like when you have lollipops sometimes that are blue, your teeth turn blue. It's a lovely sight.
I think I'd rather have blue hair.
Blue hair? I think so too. Because in some stories that means you're the main character. Right?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that's just like exclusively an anime. Your protagonist hair.
Right, yeah. Okay, would you rather lose one arm or lose one leg?
The arm.
The arm?
I'd rather be able to walk every day.
That's hard for me. My job's writing, so I feel like I'd rather lose the leg because at least I can still continue.
Didn't you have a 3-legged dog?
My grandparents did, yeah. His name was Max, and he ran around like
he ran like this.
Yeah.
He ran in diagonals.
He ran sideways, and he liked to chase one of those dodgeballs that were bigger than him.
Well, as fast as his 3 legs would take
him. It was
him.
hilarious. All right, next question. Superhero question time.
Oh, nice.
Would you rather be able to fly or be able to turn invisible?
I'd rather fly.
I agree. I think that's an easy one.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. Ooh. This is good for our quarantining right now. Would you rather get to take a shower every day, but you have to take a cold shower? Or you only get to shower once a week, but you get to take a hot shower?
I think I'd rather have the cold shower.
The cold shower? Really? Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, they're awful, though.
It's going to be like 90 degrees in like a week.
Well, okay. It was actually, I think it was 90 today for at least a little bit, but that's a tough one.
I need to wake up, and I didn't enough not showering. I need to shower.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to go into more details.
That's a good point.
I'm the guy here.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
You'd be saying the smell lines.
The superficial smell lines.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you rather not be allowed to eat your 5 favorite foods for an entire year, or be allowed to eat only your 5 favorite foods for an entire year? So, all your favorite foods, but that's it, or none of your favorite foods?
I think I'd rather go without them.
Yeah, because then you just would hate them at the end of it.
I don't want to take the risk of not liking the things I like.
For me, it'd be like mac and cheese, and I don't think I can handle that. I wouldn't.
Well, I don't think I eat my favorite foods enough on the regular to be like, oh darn, I'll miss them.
Is there anybody that eats, like, do any of you eat your favorite food every single day? Like, I have coffee every day, and I love coffee. Does that count?
Well, I don't eat like lobster drawn with butter every week.
All right. Well, if we're talking like the difference between like, all right. I guess it can be considered a favorite, right? So,
it's like surf and turf. No, I don't get that every week.
Well,
so
I guess, yeah. That's a good point.
It's more of like, yes, broccoli with a side of broccoli, or corn and corn alone day.
Oh, I don't think anybody wants that day. Okay. This is maybe more appropriate for our teenagers, but this is still, I guess, something that we could answer as well. Would you rather have a friend that is really fun to be with but not very nice, or have a friend who's kind of boring but also very kind?
The boring friend.
The boring friend.
I could be the exciting friend. They could be the boring friend. We'll be good.
We'll be fine. If any of you answer the first one to that one, we're gonna have to have a little chat.
I mean, yeah, I could be the mean friend and the exciting friend, and they could be the boring and the kind friend.
I agree.
Well, that's friendship. It's covering both those things.
Exactly. All right, let's see. Would you rather have a job that you hate but that pays you millions of dollars in a year, or have a job you love but pays you just enough to get by?
How many millions are we talking about?
It just says millions of dollars a year is what it says.
How long do I have to keep the job?
That's a good question. We're thinking outside the box.
Thinking outside the list.
Outside the list. Is that cheating? I don't know.
Because if it's like $20 million for a year's worth of work,
quit at the end of it, right?
Yeah, that'd be done.
Yeah,
I'd be like, hey, thanks for the terrible time.
That's a good
Thanks,
way.
but no thanks.
That's good. Okay, one more.
Okay.
Would you rather have one eye in the middle of your head like a cyclops, or would you rather have 2 noses? I don't think there's any animal or creature. in reality that has
okay,
two
so
noses.
again, because I'm cheating like crazy here, you can get surgery and remove the other nose. If you only have one eyeball, you're stuck.
You're stuck.
You can't get rid of you can't just like
Okay, that's
maybe,
fair.
and they can't just like move it.
No, you're right. No, that's totally fair. And I just don't think it would be no depth perception with one eyeball, first of all.
Well, I think cyclopses have depth perception, but they're also magical creatures. So,
Is there any magical creature that has two noses? I don't think that exists.
a chimera,
They have two noses?
because it's a lion, a goat, and a snake.
Right, but
It has three noses.
it's different parts of that animal.
It's still one animal.
Right, but it doesn't have three different
A
noses.
Cerberus
on its
has
face.
three faces and has three noses.
Okay, there you go.
It's the same
Cerberus.
thing. It's just another three. Yeah.
A Cerberus, yeah. I think that's probably the closest. But
These are all
I'm
mythical
imagining
things.
two noses like right next
How about a hydra? They can have tons more. These are all like non-real things, of course.
True, yeah.
I don't
Well,
know if
and
any.
here's a Cyclops, and a Cyclops is the other example.
I don't know of any real like thing animal that has more than one nose.
I know cows have, is it four stomachs?
They
or
have a few stomachs.
two stomachs.
Yeah.
So, but that's not noses. So, very good. You did well. How did you like the questions?
I certainly answered them.
How about you guys? Did you like the questions? I hope you did.
That was a lot of fun. We should do this again.
We should do it again.
All right, so we're going to be starting a new series in Genesis about Joseph. Now, I figure character study on Joseph right now is a good idea because of the kind of life that Joseph went through. Not the kind of life, the life that Joseph went through. Joseph was a teenager when his story begins. Now, Genesis is the first book in the Bible. Genesis literally means the beginnings. It is the story of how everything got to the way it is. So from chapters 1 to 11, it's the story of creation, the flood, all of that, the stuff that we're all taught when we're little. From chapters 12 to 50, this is the story on how God would set apart Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and how God would work through their families in order to bring it together. And from that point, we're going to look specifically in that story, and at the very end of that, chapters 12 through 50, and look at Joseph's story. Now, see, Abraham, God had pulled Abraham out of the land of his fathers in order to start a blessing with him that he'd bless the whole world. That's how we get Jesus. Jesus is that blessing for the whole world. He'd build a great nation out of him. He'd build a church. That's what Jesus is doing. Following him was Isaac. Isaac was the son of promise. Abraham was a very old man, and his wife Sarah was a very old woman, so they didn't think they could have children at that point, but God made a promise that he would make a nation of Abraham, and Isaac was that child. The child of Isaac was Jacob. Now, Jacob was the younger of a twin. He was a deceiver. He was a polygamist. He was a cheater. He just took advantage of everything. God had changed Jacob's life so radically, he gave him a new name, Israel. It was like men of God. And so we pick up from after all of this into Joseph's story. You see, Joseph's story is a lot like our stories. We come from families that are mixed, that are not always perfect, but God uses families, and he uses our families to change the world. And so all of us have a different story. Maybe your story is like Joseph. Maybe it's not, but maybe there are things you can grab out of Joseph's life to use it. Now, see, what we're going to really look at today through the character study of Joseph, and this is part 1 of 4 parts, is that you can trust God because God is so great, you can trust him and wait. So God is so great, you can trust him and wait. Now, right now we're doing a lot of waiting. We're doing a lot of waiting. We're waiting for the all clear. We're waiting for things to return to normal. It is an unusual situation. I think that is what a lot of people have been saying. I keep calling it that too. Very unusual what we're going through. This is the first time I've ever been through any of this. I don't know anyone who's been through this that's alive right now who can relate. But we're not the first to experience something like this. It's just the first in a while. And so Joseph's life was unusual. He comes from a mixed up family, and a lot of people would attribute his story and sometimes the stories that you and I are going through, to luck. You see, we're going to learn that there's no such thing as luck, but there is such thing as God being sovereign. You see, luck is the idea that maybe by some chance you'll have some good fortune. It's such an idea that's such in our vocabulary that people will be like, good luck, and I think they mean well. Or, ooh, bad luck. I guess we'll just see what happens. Roll the dice. I even say some of these things. I've been really trying to get them out of my vocab. Imagine if we could be as people saying, God's in control. Not saying, well, we'll see what happens, or good luck with that. And you're like, oh, God's got you. God's got you. So we're going to look at somebody who didn't rely on luck, but relied on God's sovereignty. God's sovereignty. We don't have to worry about some random chance. We have the God who holds the whole universe in his hand. So we're going to start in Genesis chapter 37, where we're going to be introduced to Joseph. Now, like I said, Joseph was the son of Jacob, or Israel. Joseph was he was born of Jacob's favorite wife. Jacob had 2 wives and 2 servants who gave him children. Leah, the wife he liked less, was able to have many children, and Rachel was not able to have many children, but he being his favorite wife, all the children out from Rachel were his favorite children. Oof, that's a mess. That's a mess. There's a reason why the Bible later says a husband of 1 wife. Because polygamy, that's not the way it needs to be. Multiple relationships. God has it intended for 1 man, 1 woman, just like it was in Adam and Eve at the very beginning, just like how Christ will be with his bride, the church, at the end. It's funny, the world begins in a marriage and will end in a marriage at the marriage feast of the Lamb. And so Jacob had broken God's decree and God's laws. He had been with 2 concubines and he had 2 wives. So the whole family situation is messed up. Joseph ends up being the child of one of his favorite wives. So Jacob plays favorites with his kids. Now it's okay to have like a favorite brand of shoes, a favorite brand of clothing line. Maybe you like a certain type of cell phone brand or a computer brand. That's one thing. It's different when we play favorites with people. Favoritism gets us in a lot of trouble. And so Joseph was the favorite. He had a lot of older brothers, but he was the favorite. Let's read his story. Now, Jacob lived in the land of his father. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, the young man of 17, was tending to the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bela, the sons of Zephlah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel, that's Jacob, loved Joseph more than his other sons, because he had been born to him of his old age, and he made him an ornate robe. And when his brothers saw that his father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly a sheaf rose and stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. While his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told his brothers, listen. He said, I had another dream. This time, the sun and the moon, 11 stars were all bowing down to me. And when he told his father, as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come to bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. You can see that there is a lot of trouble coming up in Joseph's life. A lot of trouble. So Joseph was a teenager. It says he was 17. So a little older than some of you, same age as others. He was the favorite of his father. Born of his it says that he made him in an ornate robe. So that's where we get the joke that the robe of many colors. This has been a big deal. You have to remember that dyes were expensive. So giving someone such an ornate piece of clothing in the ancient times was a sign of favoritism, a sign of wealth. And you didn't have, as like we do, tons of different clothing with tons of different dyes. That would have been a sign to people like this is somebody special. Joseph had dreams where he was superior to all of his family, including his father and mother, and he told them all about it. There's a lot of trouble. And then finally, you can see that his brothers hated him. They hated him all the more. We are just setting this scene for a lot of trouble. So, what does trouble look like in your life? Have you ever seen just the ingredients all put together and what it comes down to? So we're going to look at the 4 things that were the issues. So number 1, Joseph was a tattletale. Now, I think it's good to make sure things are right and honest. But the way that happened was, it says here, and he brought their father a bad report about them, meaning Joseph brought a bad report of his brothers to their father. So they were out farming and taking care of their sheep, and they probably weren't doing the right job. Well, maybe we don't really know. We're not supplied information. But Joseph went back to his father and told on them. And so he had set them against him by his actions. Now, we need to figure out ways to resolve issues between family members. I know what it's like to be a tattletale. I know what it's like to have been tattletaled on. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It is frustrating. Now, I think as somebody who is a brother, we need to be at a place where people don't have a reason to tattletale on us. But at the same time, we need to resolve things in a way that's biblical. What we see here is he told on them, and they hated him. They hated him. The next thing is Jacob played favorites. Playing favorites always hurts those that are not the favorite. Giving him the ornate robe, son of his old age. Listening to him, putting him first before his brothers. When it comes to people that we care about, when we play favorites, those that are not favorited, it stirs up in them animosity, anxiousness, and anger. God doesn't play favorites with us. You know, Jesus died for the wicked, which the wages of sin is death, and all fall short of the glory of God. So there was no favorites being played with us. God chose us in Christ, not for maybe having great hair, not for because, you know, he would just be a better person or she would be able to do great things. No, God didn't choose us for those reasons. God chose us because he loved us. There is no favorite there. We need to be like God. Jacob had failed, and we can't fail like Jacob did. So we need to play it straight and neutral and never play favorites. Another thing that really upset his family was that Joseph made much of his dreams, and it built more animosity between them. Yes, God had given him these dreams where they would be raised up, or he was raised up, and then like sun and the moon and the stars bow down to him. But by making himself superior, his family, it drove his brothers even madder. It drove them madder. They were not happy with him proclaiming his greatness over others. You know, one of the things that I am really put off by is when some people, that could be athletes, they could be musicians, talk about, it could be politicians, famous people, talk about how great they are. It's one thing to like just joke and kid around. It's another thing to believe it. And that hurts people. And so we need to not make much of ourselves, because we are just people who are redeemed from sin as well. We are blessed that we are redeemed. We shouldn't then make others feel less because of who we are. We should try to be a people who encourage so that all of us feel like more. This is where we appeal to who we're made to be, not who we were. Joseph was, and I think this could be because of that, of his age, his maturity, he made a big deal of this. God was not done, and we'll talk about the next few weeks what God would do with Joseph, which, if you know, he makes these dreams real, but we can't make much of who we are, especially if God has done it. We make much of who God is in us. God, you did this, not I did this. It's he and not me. The next thing was, and this is where Jesus would say, you know, if you have murdered a man, if you hate them in your heart. Joseph's brothers were angry, and that sin resided in their heart, and it grew. It says, and they hated him all the more. And it said earlier that when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to them. You see, when we allow ourselves to let sin dwell in us, and in this case, it's hate, just hatred. And this is something where, you know, maybe you're a person who struggles with anger, or maybe you're a person who just struggles with holding grudges. You know, I am aware of people who will stand in the same room together and say, tell your father that I said this. And like, well, tell him that I said that. And they'll be right next to each other. And they won't speak directly to each other. This cannot be the way that we as Christians are. That is not who we are as a people. We forgive 7 times, 70 times, which doesn't mean like, okay, I hit that number, we're done. We forgive as much as possible. We look for restoration in our relationships. We don't let sin sleep in our hearts and take root. You know, it's better for you to gouge out your eye than go to hell, is what Jesus said. When we let anger and sin fester, we're putting ourselves in that path as Christians. And if you're a non-Christian, you're on that path right now. You're on that path. You need to get that sin out of your heart. The way to get out of sin is to trust in Jesus. He died for your sins. He rose from the grave. This is what Easter is about. We can get away from sin because our God has delivered us from sin. Joseph's brothers were festering in it, and it was growing in them, and it was going to lead to something awful. Don't let sin sprout in your heart. Get it out of there. If you have an issue with somebody, get it out, get it done, communicate, connect. If you are just jealous or angry, repent, drop it. There are times where I get mad or upset at silly things. I will pray, take a breath, just stop. Sometimes it's not instantaneous, but that's when I just keep praying because the issue is me. And I need to let God be sovereign over me. God is already sovereign. I just need to stop holding on to this. So we need to not let sin live in us. But you see, what happens here is that Joseph would eventually get into a situation that would make him very bad and very well off. You see, Joseph would eventually be trapped and sold into slavery in Egypt. And so we look at how Joseph responded. For a situation that he's about to go into where he'll be sold into slavery in Egypt, he never blamed God. He never blamed God. We'll look at that in the next few weeks. But Joseph never blamed God. I look at YouTube right now, and I look at the news, and I watch all the stuff going on as we're in this situation. And people are trying to make or encourage, like, aren't you just mad at God? Do you think God doesn't care? How do you feel that your prayers are not being answered? Which, all that is way out there. That just that shows these people's assumptions on who God is. They don't know who the biblical God is. They believe in some sort of God that ain't Jesus. But we need to, when we're in a bad situation, like in this situation his family is becoming, don't blame God. Trust the God. God is so good. God is so great. I can trust him while I wait. And so while we're waiting for this to clear up, while we're in these tough situations, and let me tell you, one day you'll be in a tough situation that's different from this. It does happen. It comes. Don't blame God. Trust God instead. Grab onto him and say, Jesus, I know you work all things out for those that whom you love. That's out of Romans. Trust him. Hold on. He ain't done yet. Hold on. Don't run to anger. Run to Christ. Some people, when they're in stressful situations and they have two out poles, they can run to Jesus or they can run away. Run to him. The God of the universe, let me tell you, he has a plan. Sometimes we can't see it. Sometimes we can't know what it is. We may not be able to ever see it in this lifetime. But God's not done. He's going to take what happened, take what's bad, and turn it around for good. It may not be for you, but it might be for someone else. Just trust and hold on. The next thing is that Joseph, he never got depressed. He never got depressed. Right now, a lot of people are suffering, and it's getting depressing because as we wait, despair builds. It does. Tough things build despair. Don't despair. Don't despair. Rely on God. Trust that he is doing what he's doing. Know that he is so much bigger and has such a great plan that we don't have to despair. God is so great, you can trust him and wait. God is so great, you can trust him and wait. Hold on. Don't allow yourself to get to despair. When you feel despair, focus on what is good, what is true, what is pure, what is right. It's from Philippians. Focus on those things. Put in your mind the goodness that God has done. If you have a Bible, I would take your Bible, find one of the blank pages that they provide. They have a lot of blank pages. And this is something that I'm working on myself. Find a blank page and write every time God's answered a prayer in your life, write the date and how he answered it. Why? Because that when you feel like you are being overwhelmed with sadness, you can literally look back at a physical thing and say, God did this. Also, what I would do is that when God has overcome these tough times, make it a point to celebrate. Build something, a memory, take pictures, build it, so that you'll always remember when God delivered you from the sadness, delivered you from this tough time. Joseph didn't let himself get depressed. We read in chapter 39 here, when he was sold into slavery, which we're going to talk about a little bit more next week, and he was in Potiphar's house, the captain of the Egyptian guard. He wasn't depressed. He just trusted God. Trust God. And then finally, he fought fear and worry. Don't be fearful. Fear not is one of the many commands that God says in the Bible. Fear not. Jesus says, will an ounce of worry add to your life? Nothing. Don't fear. Don't worry. What do we have to fear when we have the God who created the universe? What do we have to fear? We don't have anything to fear. God is in control. He is the one who's bigger than everything. And so, one of the things that you could take away is how you react to your feelings in this time. Joseph had a terrible situation. He was enslaved. He was sold into another country as a teenager. We don't even know if he could speak Egyptian. Imagine being enslaved and sold and then brought to a country where you don't even speak the language. We don't know. We have to let Scripture, we have to let what God has revealed to us in his word be what controls and leads our emotions. We can't be controlled by them. We need to let what we know is true from God lead our hearts first. That's hard to do, but when you start to allow God's word to lead your spirit and your emotions, you'll have a lot more peace. You'll be brought into line with God's purpose and plan for you. When you say, look, I feel this way, but God's word says this, and it's still true, regardless on how I feel, you're going to find that your feelings are brought back into line. It says that if you pray, you can have the peace that surpasses all understanding. You can only get that as you put yourself under God's command and provision. He'll give you that peace that surpasses all understanding. And so what we're going to do is focus on what God is doing. There's going to be trials, and allow him to bless you. He's going to do it anyway. Be aware of what he's going to do in your life. And so what we're going to do is keep praying. Pray with me. I'll pray with you. We'll pray together. Contact each other. Contact me. That way we can get through this together, because God's done another thing as well. He's put us together as a church, as a family of believers, so we can help push each other towards more faithfulness. So let's stay together. Let's keep talking with one another. Let's keep praying for one another. And we're praying for you. So we were learning about God's sovereignty today, and how God's sovereignty is greater than luck. And we saw that through Joseph's story. Joseph does not have an easy start to his story, but Joseph's story finishes well. And we're going to get to that in the next few weeks. So let me ask you a question. We're in the middle of this quarantine. We can't go see our friends. We can hardly see our family members. Fortunately, we live in an era where we have technology that allows us to communicate, but it's still not the same as being with our friends. So let me ask you a question that goes like this. What do you think of the surprising twists that God is doing? What is God doing right now? Do you see God working? Do you see God's sovereign hand in the midst of this event? And if you do, what is he doing for you? If you feel bold enough, leave that in the comments. My next question is, does trusting God come naturally to you? If you're honest, would you sometimes just think that things just happen? Or do you actually think God's in control? You see, God works out all things for good for those whom he loves, as we know in the Bible. Do you believe that? And if you don't, what can you do to help bring that into your heart? And if you do, what does that look like? How do you show the trust that you have in God? My last question would be, a lot of people are despairing right now. And there's legitimate hardships going on. What can you tell your friends that would help them as they're dealing with what's going on in our world? It's not easy. It's scary. But God has a plan. How do you share that? Just think about these questions, and if you'd like, you can send them to me in my email. I'm going to put that link down at the bottom, or you can comment real quickly at the bottom. But think about those questions, and we're going to move on to our next segment.
All right, so since during our youth group time we usually split up into guys and girls, I thought maybe we could have a time for questions that aren't just for girls, but maybe more geared towards girls. So guys, you're welcome to watch, but these may be more personal, I guess, for girls. So we just finished talking about the beginning of the book of Joseph, or the story of Joseph, and finding out about everything that he had gone through. And one of the things that always really stuck out to me was just the jealousy that Joseph's brothers felt, that just felt so, I guess, it's so strong. And I know that in today's society, it's almost celebrated when we brag about things, but it's also totally acceptable to be jealous of other people and of their things and to compete for things. So I guess one of my first questions would be, have you ever run into a situation where you have felt like somebody was either really jealous of you, or that you were jealous of somebody else? They were so jealous of their father's love for their brother, that they thought it was better that he was dead, because maybe they thought that their father would love them more. Maybe they thought that the attention that Joseph received from his father would maybe then be transferred to them. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe it just was more of a pride thing with them. Is that anything that you've experienced? I'd like to know. Like I said, like Pastor Dave was saying, if there's anything that you feel like you want to share, let us know in the comments. We'd appreciate that. When Joseph was probably a teenager when this happened, so about the same age as you guys. What do you think he was feeling when he got cast into that pit? We don't get really told a lot about what Joseph said or what Joseph did. We get told a lot about what happened to him, maybe not necessarily what he experienced himself. What do you think he was feeling when he went when he was in that pit, when he realized what his brothers had done to him, when he was found, when he was sold off into slavery, what do you think he was feeling? What would you be feeling at that point? How would you respond to something like that? And what do you think of Joseph's response to all this? Instead of becoming angry and vindictive and frustrated and you fill in the blank with any negative feelings that you could feel, he responded with humility and with grace and with trust. And that would be probably really hard to do. So is there anything that's ever been in your life that maybe you've experienced that felt kind of like this, where it just was so unbelievable and so just scary that maybe it, you didn't even really know how to react to it? If there's anything like that that you've experienced, like, let us know or share with us. We'd love to hear about it. And another thing about the story of Joseph is things don't happen very quickly. We are in a time that none of us have experienced ever. Waiting is something that our culture is not very good at, is it? And we are often very impatient. We are often very easily frustrated when things don't happen instantaneously, don't go our way when we want them to. So what do you think, from Joseph's perspective, when he was going through all these things, he had to wait on God, just like we are waiting to see how God is moving through all this. How do you see the tie between the two, between Joseph's period of waiting and our period of waiting? So just some thoughts for you guys. Let us know what you think in the comments below, or if you want, if you don't feel comfortable like posting it in the comments, you can always send us a message or whatever, and we'd love to talk to you guys. So thanks again. Hope you guys are having a great weekend, great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Wow, so I think this was a good first start.
I think so too, yeah.
We will keep doing this, but we want to finish with a challenge for you. That Elena and I think what a challenge is we're going to challenge you to do something, and we want you to record it with your cell phones and then send it to us, and then I will include it in the next video. Yes. So this video will have no challenges after this is done, but next video, if you do this, we'll add it to that video.
Yep.
So the first challenge we came up with was the pets.
Correct, yes.
We want you to take a video with your pet, your cat, your dog, and your what is it, your bearded dragon. Your bird. Maybe if you don't have a pet, maybe you could just find a sibling.
Sibling works.
And take a video with them, maybe showing something it does, maybe something it doesn't do.
Yeah.
And we will include that in this next video that's coming out next week.
Yes.
So until then, that's your challenge. Let us know what you think of that. Send us that information, and we'll talk soon. Yep. God bless, guys.